When we think of monarchies, we tend to picture something out of a history book, right? A system of kings and queens that just kind of faded away. But the reality is, the age of monarchy never really ended. In fact, it's alive and well in the 21st century, and its playbook for survival is way more complex than you might think. Get this. Across the globe, right now, 43 sovereign nations have a monarch as their head of state. That's nearly a quarter of all the countries in the world. So no, this isn't some historical relic. It's a living, breathing part of our modern world. Which, of course, brings us to the big question. In an age of democracy and elections, what is the role of a ruler who inherits their job? What power do they actually have? And what purpose do they really serve? Well, that's exactly what we're going to break down. Okay, first thing you have to understand is that monarchy hasn't survived by staying the same. Not at all. Its greatest strength has been its incredible ability to change. It's not a museum piece, frozen in time. It's an institution that has constantly been tweaking its own playbook to fit the modern world. So let's just start with the absolute basics. At its core, a monarchy is just a system where one person is the head of state, and that job is usually passed down through the family. But, and this is a huge but, the amount of actual authority that person holds can be wildly different from one place to the next. And this is really the crucial point. There isn't just one kind of monarchy. You have to think of it more like a spectrum. On one end, you've got total, unrestrained power, and on the complete other end, you have a purely symbolic, ceremonial role. On that first end of the spectrum, you have absolute monarchy. This is the classic model we all think of from history books, where the king or queen's word is law. They are the government, and there's no parliament or constitution to tell them otherwise. And don't think this is just ancient history. This system is very much alive today. It's the form of government in countries like Saudi Arabia, Oman, and Brunei. And then there's a really unique case, Vatican City, which is technically an elective absolute monarchy where the Pope holds all the authority. Now, let's jump to the other side of the spectrum. This is the most common form today, the constitutional monarchy. In this system, the monarch is a symbol of the nation, a unifying figure. But the real power, the power to make laws and run the country, that belongs to a government elected by the people. Think of places like the UK, Japan, or Spain. And the difference is just stark. I mean, look at this. In an absolute monarchy, power flows from the monarch down. But in a constitutional one, power flows from the people up to their elected officials, and the monarch stands apart from all the political stuff. But of course, it's not always so black and white. There's a hybrid model too, a kind of in-between called a semi-constitutional monarchy. In places like Jordan and Morocco, the monarch actually holds significant power, especially over the military and foreign policy. But they share the job of governing with an elected parliament. Their main role is often to be a stabilizing force when politics get messy. So how have these ancient institutions managed to keep up with the times? Well, one of the biggest ways is by modernizing their own internal rules. The really fundamental stuff, like who gets to be next in line for the throne. For centuries, most European thrones were a boys-only club, the crown passed to the sons. But that has changed dramatically. It all started with Sweden back in 1980. They adopted what's called absolute primogeniture, which is a fancy way of saying the oldest child gets the throne, period. Doesn't matter if they're a boy or a girl. It was a huge adaptation to modern values. But some of these adaptations are even more radical. You have to hear about Malaysia's incredible system. It's a monarchy, but the king isn't hereditary. He's elected. How wild is that? Every 5 years, the country's 9 hereditary sultans get together, hold a secret vote, and pick one of their own to be king for a 5-year term. It's this fascinating mix of ancient tradition and a democratic process. So all of this adaptation and change leads us right back to our main question. What's the actual job of a modern monarch? Beyond the fancy ceremonies and waving, what real value do they bring to a country today? Well, there's a pretty interesting economic argument to be made. Some research suggests that because a monarch is supposed to be above politics, a nonpartisan, unifying symbol, they can help calm things down during political fights. And that stability, well, that can lead to stronger protection of property rights, which is great for business and long-term investment. And nowhere is this economic debate louder than in the UK. One report estimated the monarchy contributed almost £1.8 billion to the economy in just 1 year. But then an anti-monarchy group did their own math and said the real cost to taxpayers is more like £510 million. So who's right? Well, the supporters point to a few key things. You've got the obvious tourism boost, sure, but there are also things like royal warrant, that's basically a stamp of approval from the crown that makes British brands seem more prestigious. And then there's their diplomatic soft power, which is seen as a huge asset for building relationships around the world. But on the flip side, the critics come back with all the hidden costs. Security is a massive, massive expense. They also argue that huge revenues from royal estates should really be going to the public. And they make the point that tourists are coming for the thousand-year-old castles, not necessarily to catch a glimpse of the living royals. This whole debate is fueling a growing movement, especially in the Commonwealth. That's the group of mostly former British territories. Many of these nations are now starting to question their relationship with the crown and asking if this ancient institution still fits in a modern, post-colonial world. The most significant change we've seen recently was in 2021. That's when Barbados officially became a republic, replacing the Queen with its own president. The move was really framed as the final step in leaving its colonial past behind for good. And for a lot of people, this isn't just about changing the face on the money. Listen to what the former Prime Minister of Jamaica, P.J. Patterson, said. For him and others in countries like Jamaica and Belize, the goal isn't just a simple swap. They're calling for an effective republic, a real, fundamental shift in how their countries are governed. And that brings us to our final thought. For literally centuries, monarchy's greatest skill has been one thing: survival. It's transformed itself from an absolute power into a symbol of stability and even a global brand. But as more and more nations debate whether it's still relevant, its next act is going to be its most challenging one yet. Will it find another way to adapt, or is this the final chapter in the playbook?